Hi guys, welcome to Scholar IAS, your one-stop solution for UPSC preparation. Myself Biswajyoti Datta, your faculty for geography. So in the last class we have completed with the topic of interiors of the earth, and today we are beginning with a new topic which is called as the distribution of oceans and continents. Hi guys, so today we are going to start off with a new chapter, and as you can see the name of the chapter is distribution of oceans and the continents. Now, in order to understand the distribution of oceans and the continents, we have to understand three very important theories. The first one is called as a CDT, or the continental drift theory. Then we will look into another theory which is called as a sea floor spreading theory. And this theory is associated or goes hand in hand with another theory which is called as a mantle convection cell theory. All right, and lastly we will also talk about your plate tectonics theory. All right, okay, so this chapter has been divided into two classes because it's a little lengthy chapter. So the firstly, in today's class we will talk about your continental drift theory, sea floor spreading theory, and the mantle convection cell theory, and in the next class we will talk in details about the plate tectonics theory. Fine. So let us begin by first talking about your continental drift theory, or which is also called as your CDT. So before we understand CDT, let us go through the brief introduction which is given in the chapter. Okay. So the first point, from the known records of the history of science, it was Abraham Ortelius, okay, a Dutch map maker, who first proposed such a possibility. What type of possibility? Possibility that land masses were once put together. That means your Europe and America was a single land mass. Okay, and when did he propose it? He proposed it as early as 1596. Then came another map maker whose name was Antonio Pellegrini. Okay, he drew a map showing that the three continents were together, that is your Europe and your America as well as your Asia, right? However, it was Alfred Wegener, a German meteorologist, who put forth a comprehensive argument in the form of continental drift theory in the year of 1912. So there was this very famous German meteorologist whose name was Alfred Wegener, who put forward the theory called as a continental drift theory in the year of 1912. All right. And this was regarding the distribution of oceans and the continents. Okay, so this theory is very important, not only from your prelims perspective as well as from your mains perspective. Okay, so now here we have to understand what is this continental drift theory. Okay, fine. So the first point, according to Wegener, all the continents formed a single continental mass, and a mega ocean surrounded the same. The supercontinent was called as the Pangaea, which meant all earth, and the mega ocean was called as the Panthalassa. So what happened during the Carboniferous period? According to Alfred Wegener, if this is the earth, all the land masses were was a single landmass, which he called it as the supercontinent, and he named this supercontinent as Pangaea, right? And this Pangaea was surrounded by a super ocean, which he termed this as Panthalassa. Fine. Okay, and Panthalassa means what? Panthalassa means all water. He argued that around 200 million years ago, which is about your mid-Mesozoic times, this Pangaea that he talks about, it began to split. So the Pangaea first broke into two large continental masses. So this Pangaea that you see here, it broke into two different land masses. The one which is present in the north, he called it as your Laurasia, and Laurasia is also known by the name of Angara land. Okay, and in the south, what existed? In the south we had another continent which he termed it as your Gondwana. Fine. So during the Carboniferous times, there was a huge supercontinent called as the Pangaea, and during the mid-Mesozoic era, it broke down into Angara and Gondwana land, right? So here we have the Angara land, here we have the Gondwana land, and in between there was presence of a sea, which he called it as the Tethys Sea. Fine. So this was the basis of the continental drift theory. Fine. Okay, so subsequently, Laurasia and Gondwana continued to break into various smaller continents that exist today. Fine, for an example, if I have to consider India, India broke from the southeastern portion of the Gondwana and drifted somewhere else, and now we get India, we get Australia, right? So your Laurasia broke down into smaller continents, your Gondwana broke down into smaller continents, which gave us different continents. Fine, all right. Now, this was the main theory which was put forward by Alfred Wegener, that the continents broke, it got drifted, and it got broken down into smaller continents, right? So, this Laurasia, this Gondwana, first it broke down, then it moved in the northward direction, it moved in the westward direction, and therefore we get different smaller continents. Fine. Now, he just not only gave the theory, but he also gave evidences in support of the continental drift theory. And the first theory, and the first evidence, he termed it as the jigsaw fitting evidence. Now, what is this jigsaw fitting evidence? Let us understand. Okay, so the shorelines of Africa and South America facing each other have a remarkable and unmistakable match. For an example, if I draw South America here, okay, this is South America. Here, what do we have? Here we have the African continent, right? Now, this African continent, if I move the continent here and if I tilt it, this section tends to fit into this area like this, right? So, this coastline of South America, especially Brazil, where we have the Cape of Sao, here we have the Gulf of Guinea, right? So, if I take Africa and if I move Africa, tilt it and put it along the east coast of South America, it seems to totally fit. This gives us an evidence that during the earlier times, South America and Africa were once part of the same continent, but it got drifted and it got broken down into different continents. Understood? So, this is called as the jigsaw fit evidence. Okay, so it may be noted that the map produced using a computer program to find the best fit of the Atlantic margin was present by Bullard in the 1964. So, this jigsaw fit evidence was supported by a person whose name was Bullard. It proved to be quite perfect, and the match was tried at around your 1000 fathom line instead of the present shoreline. Then the next evidence is called as your rocks of same age across the ocean. Now, not only the coastline of South America and Africa fit together perfectly, but also the rocks which are found in South America, that is along the east coast and along the west coast of Africa, the rocks, okay, the composition of the rocks, the physical characteristics, the chemical compositions, they were also matching. Fine. The radiometric dating methods developed in the recent period have facilitated correlating the rock formation from the different continents across the vast ocean, meaning here we have the Atlantic, right? The belt of ancient rocks of 2000 million years from Brazil coast matches with those from the Western Africa. Fine. And the earliest marine deposits along the coastline of South America and Africa are of the Jurassic age. This suggests that the ocean did not exist prior to that time. Fine. So, there was no presence of the Atlantic Ocean. Your Africa was present here, but Africa moved in the right hand side direction or in the northward direction. South America moved in this direction, and therefore it resulted in formation of the Atlantic Ocean near about the Jurassic age. Understood? So, not only your coastlines are fitting perfectly to each other, but also the rocks which are found along the east coast of South America and west coast of Africa, they were also having similar compositions. Fine. Okay, then the next evidence is called as your tillet, or which is also called as your paleoclimatic evidence. Now, I will go into a little details about this beyond the NCERTs as well, because this is very interesting to understand. Okay, first I will talk about your coal formation. Now, coal, as we all know, and as I have already talked about, coal usually forms where it forms in hot and humid climate. Right, but the best type of coal, if I have to talk about where it is found in Europe. But do you think that in Europe we have hot and humid climate? The answer is no. Then why do we have coal in Europe, which is that of the best quality? So let me explain this. So what basically happened, your Europe as a continent at one point of time was present somewhere in the tropical region when Europe had a hot and humid climate. So when your Europe was present in the tropical region, it led to the formation of the coal. But with time, this Europe moved towards where? It moved or drifted in the northward direction, and currently it is present in the temperate regions, right? So the coal formation of Europe took place when it was in the tropical climate, and as it moved towards the temperate region, we still find evidences of coal. Okay, so that is the best coal that we have in the world. So this gives us evidence that Europe has drifted. It was initially present somewhere in the tropical region, but now it has drifted in the temperate region. Similarly, if I have to talk about India, in India there is a very known place by which is called as a Talcher. Now Talcher is a small place which is in Odisha, and when the geologist studies the rocks which are found in Talcher, it had glacial striations. It had glacial striations, meaning what? The rocks which are found there, it has been eroded and weathered by glaciers. Now we all know Odisha has a hot and humid climate. Of course, we do not have any glacial activities there. So this gives us an evidence that India was somewhere present in the temperate region in the southern hemisphere, but it got drifted in the northward direction and now present in the tropical areas. So when India was present somewhere in the temperate regions, the rocks which are found in India underwent glacial striations, which are called as your tillet. Right, so it underwent glacial striations, then it moved in the tropical regions in the contemporary time. So this gives us evidence that the continents are drifting, right? So these are examples of your paleoclimatic evidences. Fine. Okay, so this was the basics of your paleoclimatic evidence. So let us also go through the points. Okay, so now what is a tillet? It is a sedimentary rock which is formed out of deposits of glaciers, like I have already explained. The Gondwana system of sediments from India is known to have its counterparts in 6 different land masses of the southern hemisphere. Okay, so at the base, the system has thicker tillet indicating extensive and prolonged glaciations. So the rocks or the sedimentary rocks which has underwent glacial striations, they are called as a tillet, right? So the Gondwana rocks which are found in India, okay, there are also examples where the Gondwana rocks have underwent glacial striations, like I have already explained with the help of a place which is called as your Talcher, right? So the Gondwana rocks which are found in India, its counterparts are also present in 6 different land masses. For example, it is found in Africa, it is found in Falkland Island, it is found in Madagascar, Antarctica, Australia as well. So overall resemblance of the Gondwana type of sediments clearly demonstrate that these land masses had remarkable similar histories, and the glacial tillet provides unambiguous evidence of paleoclimates and also drifting of the continents, like I have already explained, right? Then the next evidence that he gave was about your placer deposits, meaning deposits of gold which occurs along the beds of the river. The occurrence of rich placer deposits of gold in the Ghana coast, which is in Africa, and the absolute absence of source rock in the region is an amazing fact. Understood? In the Ghana coast, we have examples of gold, but there is total absence of the source rock in the region. Meaning what? Meaning your Ghana coast was once close to the Brazilian coast, where we have evidences of gold as well, right? So even if it does not have the source of origin of gold, we still find gold in Ghana because it was once closer to Brazil. Fine. Your gold bearing veins are in Brazil, right? And it is obvious that the gold deposits of Ghana are derived from the Brazil plateau when the two continents lay side by side when your Atlantic Ocean was not present, right? Then the last evidence that he gave was with the help of distribution of fossils. Okay, so let us go to the points. When identical species of plants and animals adapted to living on the land or fresh water are found on either side of the marine barriers, a problem arises regarding accounting for such distribution. The observations that lemur occurs in India, Madagascar and Africa led to some to consider a contiguous landmass called as the Lemuria, linking these 3 land masses. So your lemur is found in Africa, Madagascar as well as India, meaning what? Meaning it as a plausible, there can be evidences, or it provides an evidence that they were again once part of the same continent, right? Now this was the first fossil that Wagner took the help of, that is your lemur fossils, right? Second is more convincing, which is about your Mesosaurus and also Lystrosaurus, which is not given in the NCERT, but for your knowledge I am saying. Now what is this Mestrosaurus and Lezosaurus? Now these are fossils of shallow brackish water reptiles. Fine. So first evidence was with the help of lemur fossils, which are found in Africa, Madagascar as well as India. Then we also have evidences, or he also took help of fossils like Mesosaurus and Lystrosaurus, which are nothing but fossils of shallow brackish water reptile. Fine. Now this Mesosaurus and Lystrosaurus fossils has been found both along South America coast as well as along the African coast. Is this possible? See, now if from the earlier times itself, if South America and Africa were separated from each other, okay, then how can we have shallow brackish water reptile both in South America as well as Africa? Suppose for an example, your Mestrosaurus and Lezosaurus was initially found only in South America. Do you think that from South America can it cross the Atlantic Ocean and move towards Africa? No, because they are reptiles of shallow brackish water, right? So it is only possible to find evidences of Lystrosaurus and Mesosaurus fossils in both South America as well as Africa when and only your South America and Africa were put together and it was a single landmass. Then it got separated, and therefore we have evidences of Mesosaurus and Lystrosaurus both in South America as well as Africa. Understood? So Mesosaurus was a small reptile which is adapted to shallow brackish water. The skeletons of these are found only in two localities, that is your South Cape province of South Africa and your Iroquois formations of Brazil. These two localities are presently 4,800 kilometers apart with an ocean in between them. Fine? Understood these evidences? Alright. So as of now we have talked about the theory in itself, then we have talked about the evidences. Then let us also talk about the forces behind the drifting. What is the name of the theory? It is continental drift theory. First we had a supercontinent which broke down, then it started to drift, right? So why it drifts or why it moves? Because there are different forces which are involved in the process of drifting, and it was one of the major reason behind the criticism of this theory, that is the forces which resulted in drifting of the continents. Okay, so Wegener suggested that the movement responsible for the drifting of the continents was because of two different forces. The first one he termed it as the pole fleeing force, and because of your tidal forces. Pole fleeing force is what force? This is the force which is related to the rotation of the earth. So because of the rotation of the earth from west to east, there existed a force in the opposite direction from east to west, and this east to west force he termed it as the pole fleeing force. And because of this pole fleeing force which is acting from east to west, the continent started to drift towards the west. Understood? Again I will repeat: rotation of the earth from west to east, pole fleeing force is acting from east to west. Understood? To counterbalance the rotation of the earth. Fine. So if the continent is present here, where do you think because of the pole fleeing force will it move? It will of course move in the westward direction. Then the second force is the tidal force, and Wegener stated that because of the tidal forces the continents were moving in the northward direction. So the continents drifted in two different directions, one westward, second in the northward direction. Fine. So you are aware of the fact that the earth is not a perfect sphere and it has a bulge at the equator, right? And this bulge is due to the rotation of the earth. Then the second force that was suggested by Wegener is the tidal force, which is due to attraction of both the moon and the sun. Okay, so it is not exclusively the sun but also the sun as well as the moon, right, that develops the tides in the oceanic waters. Wegener believed that these forces would become effective when applied over many millions years. However, most of the scholars consider that these forces is totally inadequate. Okay, now I will ask you a question here. Do you really think that the tidal forces are strong enough? Okay, is it strong enough to move the continents? Of course, it is totally absurd, right? So everyone agreed with the model which was proposed by Alfred Wegener, but they were not convinced by the forces that was described by Wegener, which resulted in drifting of the continents, right? So this was one of the major criticism. Okay, so this was all about the continental drift theory. Now we will talk about two very important theories, that is your convection shell theory, and then we will talk about the sea floor spreading theory. Okay, so basically these are the theories which developed after or post continental drift theory. Therefore we call this as post drift studies. Fine. So it is interesting to note that for continental drift, most of the evidences was collected from the continental area in the form of distribution of flora and fauna or deposits like tilt. Okay, so most of the evidences were taken from your continental land masses. A number of discoveries during the post-World War II period added new information to geological literature. Particularly, the information collected from the ocean floor mapping provided new dimensions for the study of distribution of oceans and the continents, right? So your Alfred Wegener's evidences were limited only to the continental land masses, but post your World War II, new studies started to develop which also talked about the studying of the oceans or mapping of the ocean flow, right? So in this background, let us talk about a very important theory which was given by a person named Arthur Holmes, and the name of the theory is what? It is called as the convection shell theory, or it is also called as a mental convection shell theory. Okay, mental convection shell theory. Fine. So Arthur Holmes in 1930s discussed the possibility of convection currents operating in the mantle portion. These currents are generated due to radioactive elements causing thermal differences in the mantle portion. Holmes argued that there exists a system of such currents in the entire mantle portion. This was an attempt to provide an explanation to the issue of force as given by Alfred Wegener, on the basis of which contemporary scientists discarded the continental drift theory. Now let us understand. Now we have gone to the points, right? Now what is this convection theory or mental convection shell theory? Okay, now this theory challenged the forces which was given by Alfred Wegener. Fine. So according to the mental convection shell theory, what happens if this is the surface of the earth? Now here we have the lithosphere, which is nothing but the crust and the upper part of the upper mantle, right? So Holmes stated that from the mantle region, the magma flow is not random. The magma will move in the upward direction. Then as it encounters the lithosphere, now this is, sorry, now here we have the lithosphere, here we have the asthenosphere, right? Okay, let me draw this again. This is the lithosphere. Below the lithosphere, what do we have? We have the asthenosphere, right? So Holmes stated that the magma from the mantle will move in the upward direction. It will encounter the asthenosphere, then either it will move to the left or it will move to the right. Okay, and as it moves or as it flows horizontally, it will then move in the downward direction, then it will complete a shell. This I will call it as mental convection shell 1. Then again the magma will move in the upward direction, then it will move in the rightward direction, it will fall down and it will complete a shell. This I will call it as shell 2. Fine. So as the magma moves in the upward direction, either it will move to the right or it will move to the left, meaning it will flow horizontally and it will complete a shell. I will call this as C1 and I will call this as C2. Fine. Now suppose if there is only one convection shell present, take for example only C1. Okay, forget C2. If only C1 is present, what will happen to the lithosphere? The lithosphere will move to the right or will it move to the left? Of course, the lithosphere then will now move to the left because the upper limb, okay, the upper limb of shell 1 is moving to the left. And suppose if C1 was not present and only C2 is present, where the upper limb is moving towards the right, the lithosphere will move to the right or to the left? It will move towards the right. Understood? So Wegener talked about the movement of the continents to the north or to the west because of your tidal forces and because of the rotation of the earth. But the mental convection shell theory talks about the movement of the lithospheric plates or your lithospheric plates or your tectonic plates because of your mental convection shells. Your magma moving in the upward direction, then flowing horizontally to the right and left, completing a shell. Understood? And this is what the plate tectonics theory, which we will deal in the next class, takes support of, right? because as I have already mentioned, the lithosphere is not uniform. It is broken down into several plates, lithospheric plates, and these lithospheric plates will interact with each other. It will move towards each other, it will move away from each other, or it will slide past each other. All these movements are because of the mantle convection cells which are found just below the lithosphere. Okay, so the movement of the lithosphere is not because of your rotation of the earth or the tidal forces, but because of your mantle convection cells. Understood this theory? Now this theory is very important because this theory forms the basis of sea floor spreading theory as well as your plate tectonics theory. Fine. Okay, now let us talk about mapping of the ocean floor. Your detailed research of the ocean configuration revealed that the ocean floor is not just a vast plain, but it is full of relief. Okay, so we might get an idea that the ocean floor is flat, but it is not so. It has a different types or different reliefs which are found along the ocean floor, which we will talk about. Then expeditions to map the oceanic floor in the post World War II period provided a detailed picture of the ocean relief and indicated the existence of a submerged mountain ranges as well as deep trenches. Okay, so along the ocean floor, we not only find mountain ridges, which we call it as your mid-oceanic ridges. We also find other type of small hills, but we also find locations which are called as trenches, meaning where your ocean floor is moving down. So these areas are called as your trenches, and in the middle we have the mid-oceanic ridges. So this is how the ocean floor looks like. At the center we have the mid-oceanic ridges, and at the edges of the ocean floor we have a location where the ocean floor is moving below the continents. Now here we will have a continent C1, here we will have a continent C2, right? So in the middle of the oceans, for an example, this is South America. Here what do we have? Here we have Africa. In between we will have the mid-oceanic ridges, and at these locations along the edges where the oceans and the continents meet, here basically what do we see is that the ocean floor is moving below the continents, and these locations are called as trenches. Now you can ask me here, why is not the continent moving below, but why is your ocean moving below? Your oceans are moving below the continents, or your ocean floor is moving below the continental crust. Why? Because your ocean floor is much more denser compared to the continent. So whenever a continent and the ocean meets or at the boundary, always the ocean will move below because it is much more denser. Fine. Okay, so we have your mountain ranges, we have deep trenches, mostly located closer to the continent margins, right? The mid-oceanic ridges or the moors were found to be the most active in terms of volcanic eruptions, which we will talk about. Then the dating of the rocks from the oceanic crust revealed the fact that they are much more younger compared to the continental areas. It is usually believed that the oceans are first to form before the continents. But when we study the rocks, or when we study the ages of the rocks of both continents as well as the oceans, you will notice that the ocean floor is much younger compared to the continent. Why? We will understand this. Okay, so rocks on either side of the crest of your oceanic ridges and having equidistant locations from the crest were found to have remarkable similarities both in terms of constituents as well as their ages. Now what is this point talking about? Let us understand. Okay, now here this is the ocean floor. Here we have the mid-oceanic ridges. Now suppose here if I have a rock layer, and here if I have a rock layer. Now suppose this rock layer 1 is equidistant from this area, right? So this is the mid-oceanic ridge. Suppose this distance d1 is equal to d2, right? So it is seen that the rocks which are equidistant from the mid-oceanic ridges, suppose these one R1 and R2, they will have similarities both in terms of constituents as well as ages. Similarly, if there is a rock layer here and if there is a rock layer here, if both of these rock layers are equidistant from the mid-oceanic ridge, they will have similar characteristics, right? Now why it happens, we will understand when we talk about the seafloor spreading theory. Fine. Okay, so now let us talk about the configuration of the ocean floor. The ocean floor may be segmented into three major divisions based on the depth as well as the forms of relief. These divisions are continental margins, then we have the deep sea basins, and then we have the mid-oceanic ridges, right? So there are three main divisions. The first one is the continental margin, then we have the deep sea basin, and then we have the moors or the mid-oceanic ridges. So now let us first talk about your continental margins. So these form the transition between the continental shores and the deep sea plains. Okay, now here we have a continent. As we move down, this is how it looks like. Fine. So here we have the water. This is the ocean. This is the continent. Alright, so as we move from the continents towards the oceanic area, we find different layers. The first one is called as the continental margin. Okay, so let us understand this continental margin. Your continental margin mostly includes the continental shelf, it includes your continental slope, and then it includes the continental rise. Okay, so the area, this section that you see here, this area that you see here, this is called as the continental shelf, or the part of the continent which is below the sea level, right? This is the sea level, this is the continent. Now the continent moves below the sea level. So this section which is just below the sea level, we call it as the continental shelf, where your fishing is done. Okay, now below the continental shelf, we find a region which is very, very steep in nature. So first we will have the shelf, then we find a region which is having a slope. It is called as your continental slope. Again, this is part of the continental crust and not the oceanic crust. After the continental slope, we find a gentle sloping area which we call it as the continental rise, and this is where your continent ends and what starts? The ocean basin will start now. Understood? Here we have the sea level, right? This section is called as the continental shelf. Then we have the continental slope having a steep slope. Then we have the continental rise, and finally we have the ocean floor, which is part of the oceanic crust. So till continental rise, we have the continental landmass or your continental crust, and after that we will have the oceanic crust. Understood this? Of these, the deep oceanic trenches are the areas which are of considerable interest in so far as the distribution of oceans and continents are concerned. So in this section, like I have already mentioned, in the boundary between the oceanic crust and the continental crust, what do we find here? We find here trenches, right? Fine. Then we have the abyssal plain. This area, that is the ocean floor, is called as the abyssal plain. So these are extensive plains that lie between the continental margin and the mid-oceanic ridges. What does this mean? Again, continent, then we have the ocean, right? Here we have the mid-oceanic ridges, here we have the ocean. So continental slope, shelf, continental slope, continental rise, and then abyssal plain. So this area that you see here, these sections that you see here, this is known as the abyssal plain or the floor of the ocean. Fine. The abyssal plains are the areas where the continental sediments that moved beyond the margins gets deposited. So sediments from the continents gets also deposited along the ocean floor. Understood? Fine. Then we have the mid-oceanic ridges, which we have already understood in the last class. So this forms an interconnected chain of mountain system within the ocean. It is the longest mountain chain on the surface of the earth, though submerged under the oceanic waters. It is characterized by a central rift system at the crest, a fraction plateau, a flank zone all along its length, and the rift system at the crest is the zone of intense volcanic activity. Now this we will understand by the concept of sea floor spreading. Fine? Okay. Let us understand what is this sea floor spreading. The post-drift studies provided considerable information that was not available at the time of Wegener put forth his concept of continental drift. Particularly, the mapping of the ocean floor and the paleomagnetic studies of the rocks from oceanic regions revealed the following facts. So, what are the following conclusions that were made when we studied the sea floor? So, in this background, let us understand the sea floor spreading theory. Very important to understand. Okay, now I will draw some diagrams. Here we have the continental crust C1. Here we have a continental crust C2. Right? From now here, what do we have? Okay, let me explain this. Forget this diagram. Now, suppose here we have a continent which is called as C1. Below this C1, what happened? Your magmatic intrusion will take place. Your magma will move in the upward direction. Then it will move to the left. This one will move to the right, and then it will complete a cell. Right? So this is C1 and this is C2. This is continental crust 1. This is your mantle convection cell 1, mantle convection cell 2. Now in this section, if you notice what will happen, the C1 is trying to pull the C1 to the left, then your mantle convection cell 2 is trying to pull the continental mass to the right, and because of this a lot of stress develop in this region, and because of this what happens, your continent gets broken down into two different parts, C1 and C2, and in between what we will have magmatic flow. It results in formation of a volcano, which we call it as your mid-oceanic ridge. Okay, so this is what this diagram is showcasing. Here we have C1, here we have C2, and in between what do we have? We have the mid-oceanic ridges along the whole length of the ocean, right? Now here we have what? Here we have your mantle convection cell C1, here we have mantle convection cell C2 moving to the right in the upper limb, right? So in this mid-oceanic ridge, what is happening? Your magma is flowing both in the right direction as well as in the left direction, because your magma is moving in the upward direction through the mid-oceanic ridges, and from here your magma will flow horizontally to the right and left. And once this magma starts to cool down, it results in formation of what? It results in formation of your ocean floor. So initially what did we have? Initially we had a continental mass. Magmatic intrusion took place, which resulted in the continental mass getting broken down into C1 and C2, and in between what did we have? We have the mid-oceanic ridges from where the magma is flowing in the right and left, right? And as the magma cools down, in between what do we get? We get the ocean floor, right? So this is how the ocean floor originates. So now what happens? C1, C2, mid-oceanic ridge, your magma is moving in this direction, magma is moving in this direction, meaning what? Meaning this section of the ocean is moving in the right, this section of the ocean is moving to the left, and it is meeting whom? It is meeting continental landmass C1 and continental landmass C2. So this is where it meets, meaning these are the location of trenches. These are the location of trenches, right? So what can we say? Now as this ocean floor is moving to the left and to the right, as it meets the continent, it will move below the C1 and it will move below C2 and will go to the mantle and it will get destroyed. So mores, we can say mores are the location where the ocean floor gets originated, and your trenches are the location, where your ocean floor is getting destroyed. So always remember, or if you notice in this diagram, your ocean floor is continuously forming and it is continuously getting destroyed. Meaning what? Meaning what is happening to the ocean floor? Is your ocean floor increasing? Is its length increasing? It's decreasing, or it is remaining constant? Your answer is that your ocean floor remains constant, because mid-oceanic ridges, it forms continuously, and trenches are the location where it is getting destroyed continuously. Therefore we can say that your ocean floor remains constant, and as the ocean floor is forming and getting destroyed, meaning what? Meaning it is getting renewed. Therefore we can say that your ocean floor is much more younger compared to that of the continents. And this is all about your sea floor spreading, right? So this is all about the theory. Let us just go through the points quickly as possible. Okay. So what are the different facts that were understood while studying the ocean floor? First, it was realized that along the mid-oceanic ridges, volcanic eruptions are common, and they bring huge amount of lava to the surface in this area, like we have already seen. The rock equidistant on either side of the crest of the mid-oceanic ridges shows remarkable similarities in terms of period of formation, chemical composition, magnetic properties. Rocks closer to the mid-oceanic ridges have normal polarity and are youngest. So suppose your magmatic intrusion is taking place, or your lava is moving from the mid-oceanic ridges to the left and to the right. So therefore the rocks which are formed here, they are much more younger compared to the rocks which are found here, because it is constantly moving, right? Because your lava is constantly moving, meaning the ocean floor is constantly moving from this section to this section. Therefore this section is younger and this section will be older. Understood? The ages of the rocks increases as one moves away from the crest. So these are the younger portion of the ocean, and these are the older portion of the oceans which are getting continuously destroyed. Next, The ocean crust rocks are much younger than the continental crust. Why? We have already talked about. The age of rocks in the ocean crust is nowhere near about 200 million years old. But if I have to talk about the continental rocks, they are about your 3.2 billion years old, right? Then the sediments of the ocean floors are unexpectedly very thin, right? The thickness of the ocean crust is very small, and the thickness of your continents are very high, right? It is much more thicker compared to that of your oceans, right? Scientists were expecting, if the ocean floors were as old as the continent, to have a complete sequence of sediments for a period of much longer duration. However, nowhere was the sediment column found to be older than 200 million years. Then the deep trenches have deep-seated earthquakes occurrences, while in the mid-oceanic areas the quake foci have shallow depths. So in the mid-oceanic regions, as your volcanic eruption is taking place, these are areas of earthquakes. Similarly, the trenches are also the locations where earthquake occurs, because as the ocean floor is moving below the continents, what will happen? Collision or friction will develop or not. As the friction develops, it results in earthquakes. Fine. Okay, last point. These facts and detailed analysis of the magnetic properties of the rocks on either side of the mid-oceanic ridges led Hess to pronounce his hypothesis known as the seafloor spreading. Okay, now there was this person Hess who gave the theory seafloor spreading, right? Now always remember another very important point which is associated with seafloor spreading is that, again, if this is the mid-oceanic ridge, now here we have a rock band which is equidistant from this rock band. Always remember the rock layers which are equidistant from the mid-oceanic ridges, they will have similar magnetic properties. Again, if this rock layer is equidistant from this rock layer, these two rock layers will have similar magnetic properties as well as magnetic polarity. Fine. It can have a normal polarity, it can also have a reverse polarity. Fine. So Hess argued that the constant eruptions at the crest of the oceanic ridges causes the rupture of the oceanic crust, like we have seen, and the new lava will wedge into it, pushing the ocean floor, okay, and thus it spreads, meaning your lava will move upward direction. As it flows into the right and left hand direction, your ocean floor starts to spread, right? The younger age of the oceanic crust, as well as the fact that the spreading of the one ocean does not cause the shrinking of the another one, is what the theory basically is talking about. He further maintained that the ocean floor gets pushed due to your volcanic eruptions at the crest, like we have already seen, sinks down at the oceanic trenches and gets consumed, and that is the reason why your ocean floor remains constant, right? So this was all about your continental drift theory, your seafloor spreading theory, as well as your mantle convection cell theory. Okay, so let us go to the points. Who amongst the following was the first to consider the possibility of Europe, Africa and America having located side by side? Alfred Wegener, Abraham Ortelius, your Antonio Pellegrini, or your Edmund Hess? The correct answer is Abraham Ortelius, right? Then polar fleeing force is related to revolution of the earth, rotation of the earth, gravitation or tides. Of course, it is your rotation of the earth, right? So this is where we will stop. Thank you. So I hope you understood today's topic, where we initially talked about a very important theory which is called as the continental drift theory, and then moving on we have talked about your two very contemporary models in geography. The first one is called as your Arthur Holmes model of mantle convection cell, and second one that we talked about is your seafloor spreading. So in the next class, we will continue with the same chapter of distribution of oceans and the continents, where we will talk specifically on the plate tectonics theory. So stay tuned to Scholar for more such videos.